Our world has become way too complex, and the complexity of our world has also been complicated by some wicked problems. But in the midst of all of this, we must realize that all of the issues that we face, from terrorism to pandemics to climatic issues and political issues, are all consequences of our choices and decisions, both as a people and a society. And the truth is, the problem in every generation belongs to people in that generation. And the world only moves forward as individuals rise up to take responsibility for the problems they meet in society. Now, this is what we do at every Session Leadership Agenda Summit. Committed and hungry change seekers gather to learn, to connect, and to collaborate on solving some of the world's biggest issues, beginning with the local environment to continental level and of course global level. Now, in November 2021, we're going to be in Pretoria, South Africa for the 2021 edition, in-person edition of Leadership Agenda Summit. And I'm calling on you to be a part of this movement, to redefine the philosophy of leadership in the world. So people must understand that while those in high office must do what they must do, it is ultimately the choices and the decisions of individuals to make a difference in society that determines the outcomes we have as a people. So I'm calling on you to be a part of the movement to set a new philosophy of leadership in the world as we gather in Pretoria in November 2021. And I'm calling on you to be a part of this, whether as an individual, as a corporate organization, or as a government. You have details on the screen right now that can help you contact us, because until we rise up as a people and make decisions as a people to change the narrative of our society, our world will continue to spiral out of control. We have the power within us to make a difference. We can make a difference when we try. I'm calling on you to join us. Be a part of change. Be a part of the movement to transform the world and bring in a new day. Join us in Pretoria, South Africa by 2021 and be a part of the solution of the world.
Hello? Oop.
Our world has become way too complex, and the complexity of our world has also been complicated by some wicked problems. But in the midst of all of this, we must realize that all of the issues that we face, from terrorism to pandemics to climatic issues and political issues, are all consequences of our choices and decisions, both as a people and a society. And the truth is, the problem in every generation belongs to people in that generation. And the world only moves forward as individuals rise up to take responsibility for the problems they meet in society. Now, this is what we do at every Session Leadership Agenda Summit. Committed and hungry change seekers gather to learn, to connect, and to collaborate on solving some of the world's biggest issues, beginning with the local environment to continental level and of course global level. Now, in November 2021, we're going to be in Pretoria, South Africa for the 2021 edition, in-person edition of Leadership Agenda Summit. And I'm calling on you to be a part of this movement, to redefine the philosophy of leadership in the world. So people must understand that while those in high office must do what they must do, it is ultimately the choices and the decisions of individuals to make a difference in society that determines the outcomes we have as a people. So I'm calling on you to be a part of the movement to set a new philosophy of leadership in the world as we gather in Pretoria in November 2021. And I'm calling on you to be a part of this, whether as an individual, as a corporate organization, or as a government. You have details on the screen right now that can help you contact us. Because until we rise up as a people and make decisions as a people to change the narrative of our society, our world will continue to spiral out of control.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I'd like to welcome you to this session, which will be talking about the topic: China and the U.S. strained diplomatic ties, India and the rest of the world. I should say to everyone watching, either directly on Facebook, on YouTube, or any of our other channels, I want to say welcome. I'm expecting that we'll have an interesting conversation, and more importantly, we'll take out a few insights from the wonderful panel that I have working with me. So I will be introducing my panelists, and I'm going to be starting with Dr. Punit. You do me a favor by allowing me just run through his profile shortly. Dr. Punit is Associate Professor at the Department of Religious and Cultural Studies, Faculty of Philosophy and Political Science at the Al-Farabi Kazakh National University in Kazakhstan. He's also a visiting professor at IS School of Social Sciences and Humanities at Astana International University in Kazakhstan, Department of World History and International Relations at the Faculty of History, Buketov University in Kazakhstan. Also, he did his PhD in international relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, India. He was also associate with CRRID as associate fellow and is engaged in a project titled Central Asia Between Many Silk Roads, Indian Policy at the Crossroad as a project director. Please join me as we recognize and welcome Dr. Punit Gaur as one of our panel today. Thank you, Dr. Punit. Thank you for joining us.
Very good afternoon. Good evening to all of you. Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
Yeah, please, would you like to say something?
No. I was just welcoming you. I mean, I'm going to quickly introduce the others, then we'll get into the conversation, if that's okay.
First, you want to introduce the other panelists, or you want me to start?
No. I want to introduce the other panelists, and then we'll go into the conversation.
So let's do it. Let's do it. Okay.
All right, thanks. My second panelist is also a well-respected PhD holder. Is Dr. Leonid Gavin. Is an author of about 50 scientific publications and more than 3,000 articles on geopolitics, international relations, conflict, globalization, philosophy of politics in Russia, and foreign media. His field of professional interests include geopolitics, globalization, foreign relation, multipolarity, strategic culture, international and national security, amongst others. He speaks Russia, Ukrainian, Ancient Greek, Latin, English, and Spanish. Is the director of the Foundation for Monitoring and Forecasting of Development of the Cultural Territorial Spaces. He's editor-in-chief of the geopolitical portal, head of administration of the International Social Movement, Eurasian Movement, amongst many other distinguished qualifications. He was formerly a fellow of the Center of Conservative Research and editor-in-chief of Geopolitical Magazine, Department of International Relations, Faculty of Sociology, Moscow State University from 2008 to 2014. Like I said, he's an author of multiple books, author of multiple publications, well regarded globally and across Europe and all around the world. Please join me as we welcome a very distinguished Dr. Leonid Savin. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks. Our third panelist is also someone who is of high repute. His name is Don DeBar. Don DeBar is a journalist and political analyst that is based currently in New York. He hosts a daily 30-minute radio newscast and is a frequent contributor to international media, including RT and Press TV. Please join me as we recognize and welcome Don DeBar. Don, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And also, will someone introduce you to our viewers, because you're also definitely worthy of their understanding.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. Like I said, it's an interesting conversation we're having because we're talking about what is going on around the world and how the issues within the global polity influences not just the active players, but also every one of us all over the world. And so I'm just going to provide some bit of background. On 11th October 2019, Evans S. Medeiros published an article online, and the title of the article says "The Changing Fundamentals of U.S.-China Relations." And I'm just going to provide this as some bit of background. And this is where it starts. It says the U.S.-China relationship is changing in fundamental ways. Please remember this was in 2019. It says the U.S.-China relationship is changing in fundamental ways. Currently, the United States and China are engaged in an intensive and costly trade war. Even if resolved through negotiations, will likely not provide the basis for long-term stability. Indeed, it may carry the seed of future confrontation. More broadly, many of the fundamental ideas that once guided the relationship between America and China are being called into question today, such as engagement, cooperation, and convergence. And we have seen how from the last administration in the United States to the current one, how there's been a thawing of relations, but the essential element of ice and competition, or what we now call competition, still exists. So I have a couple of questions to draw you out and get us into this conversation. And my starting place would be with Don DeBar. I'm going to start with you because you're currently in New York. I mean, so I'm going to start. How would you characterize the current state of the United States and China relationship? How would you characterize it?
Dangerous.
Wow.
The United States foreign policy vis-a-vis any potential power center in the world right now is very dangerous. Potentially explosive. Driven by thermonuclear reactions. And I'm laughing because people my age have had to live with the threat of nuclear war hanging over our heads since we were children. And I remember being in the hallways of my school going like this in October of 1962. I could read the newspapers at age 7, and I understood what was going on. We saw Reagan rise and fall, and we thought again, these crazy people are going to actually do it. And then after 1991, the threat of that happening came out, sort of went away some. the U.S. and Soviet Union or Russia weren't going to have a nuclear war anytime soon. And then the United States started moving all of its, material up to Russia's borders, beginning with Clinton. And I'm watching this the whole time, as is, much of the world, although not so many here. And you can see all of a sudden they're positioning themselves for another Barbarossa exercise. They're exciting now in Belarus, and they're trying to basically excite a war again in Ukraine. We had backed off this threat. When Trump took office in January of 2017, we had just had another mass expulsion of diplomats and a confiscation of diplomatic compounds in the United States at a time when we were having war games from the Baltic Sea to Korean Peninsula against Russia and China. And, a lot of viewers don't understand what war games means. War games means the enemy is coming in, and you don't know if it's a real war or not until they get to the border and stop or don't. The weapons are active. Everybody's in motion. The material's in place. Why is the United States wheeling a whole bunch of tanks towards the gatehouse coming into our border over here? Oh, gee, it's only war games. So that was a constant state of excitement of the relations between the two countries on material terms in the context of adding THAAD missiles to Korea and adding the other, I forget what it's called, but the other anti-missile missile. It was in Bulgaria, Romania, and in the Balkans. Looking at that, and then seeing that the whole establishment here was opposed to Trump. Forget that it should have been or shouldn't have been, but on the basis of him being a puppet of Russia. In other words, the Russians have taken over our government. How much more of a dire threat could they call on the population of the United States for to prepare them for war? It's frightening. And China's relationship with the United States rests on the real danger, quote unquote, but the material thing of relevance here is that China and Russia, more or less as a consequence of the stupidity of the U.S. government, are now required to be and have declared themselves as strategic partners in terms of the military. In other words, if you attack one of us, you're attacking both of us. Article 5 NATO, whatever you want to say, this is our deal. We are standing together, so don't make war against either one of us. Well, it stopped while Trump was president. There was a lot of crap that he threw rhetorically at China, and from the United States, that's nerve-wracking because usually they talk that stuff and then they make a war. But it was really more rhetorical than anything. And they also stopped having confrontations on the high seas in the South China Sea. Like all the material stuff stopped. The war games in Korea stopped. When they start coming towards the 38th parallel from the military bases in Okinawa and Guam and, the whole Pacific fleet comes fuming. They're coming at China too. If you look at the map, if you're standing on China's land and you see that coming, it's like, well, they're coming here. That stopped with Trump, and these guys are gearing it all up again. The people there now, though, have seen that the American population has been prepared for 5 years almost to fear Russia as the one that took over the United States and gave us Trump, who we all hate, and China is the one that gave us the disease. Trump's followers right now are ready for war with China, and Biden's followers are ready for war with Russia. And that's the condition that applies with any international, activity going on. Last thing, there's the rising. This is the objective condition, which everyone here knows. There's the rising multipolar world. BRICS. Okay, then I don't know, RICS and BRICS. The core of that is Russia, India, and China. Asia, even Eurasia, but Asia is rising to prominence. The shift right now, my good friend Dr. Anthony Montero always refers to it as epical, and I agree with him. We're at the precipice of a major qualitative change in power relations in the United States. The material basis for it has already been created. The factories are already in China and India and other places, and not in the United States. but the political and economic reality is just now shifting. That people have been in charge of this construct here, whatever term you want to use for the elite, or however you envision that power being, the state, raw state being. They know that this rising multipolarity means not just the loss of their hegemony immediately, obviously by definition, but also their position is in reality, is starting to sunset. And so that you saw aggressive activity, like they got poked in the eye against Brazil. They took out Dilma Rousseff. They locked up the former president Lula, and also in South Africa. You saw unrest in South Africa a couple of years back after Zuma. The same guys trying to strip apart this. India and China have
hello, Don. Hello, Don. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted us to, start with providing some bit of background, and then we can go into the conversation deeper. So I wanted to pull in Dr. Punit and Leonid, and more from the 70s to the 80s, and I took some time researching the subject matter. The American and Chinese relationship had always been considered strategically competitive. But what we see today, particularly in the last 4 years of Trump, and surprisingly, even in the last few months, in the last 4 months of we've seen the relationship evolve into an adversarial relationship. So I'm going to ask your opinion, Dr. Punit. How would you characterize the relationship currently? What's your view?
Thank you, Basamta, for giving me this opportunity to talk about on this topic. And as the tone is set by Don, whenever we are talking about China, explosive and dangerous, these two things are always there. Whether you are talking about China-US relation, whether you are talking about any other nation relations to the China, in every perspective, whether it is social, economic, political, it can be one or two at a time or one time at a time, but it can lead to these kind of, sooner or later, it will lead to the dangerous situations or explosive situations, which we need to contain in this perspective, and we want to see it before it coming to this relations with any other nations with China. So in that perspective, I think China-America relation is always on the roller coaster ride. There will never be it so simple, and it was always up and downs is always there. But in my point of view, what I have done some research on that, and what I'm doing in perspective of the Eurasian politics of all these things, what I think is, as a scholar, that America, it's America who took it lightly, took China very lightly in this perspective, because he couldn't able to kind of perspective which they need to give to the whole world. America couldn't able to do it. I remember in 2012 when, although they have their own reasons about this, because in 2012 when Hillary Clinton was the state of secretary, and she announced that Asia pivot policy, in that particular which she couldn't able to forward with this particular policy because of she defeated with the Trump and then she couldn't able to continue with this. But I think at that time, it was a strong message to give to the world that China is emerging superpower kind of things, and not into the superpower, but they are managing their view on a global level. And 5 years or 7 years since then, since 2012, and 8 years or so, we have witnessing that how rapidly China is increasing its volume, increasing its a kind of policy into this whole global level, either it is on Eurasia or Europe, and trying to reach out to the Europe, and have finally come to the contestant state towards the United States. So I think this is something which we need to understand at the first point of time. And when I come into the point to the India, two which I would like to mention in my opening remarks is that India is not still the part of BRI, Belt and Road Initiatives. India is still having a standoff in line of actual control with China, the border areas. So these two things, which are really amalgamate to each other or contemplating to each other, which is very important to understand that how US is important for India and how India is important for US, vice versa, to contain China in not only into the onto the global level but also into the Indo-Pacific region. And India was advocating this since so many years. And finally, I think in 2017, when the Quad is revival in its revival form, and now they have first leader summit of Quad, which is the quadrilateral grouping kind of situation of Australia, Japan, India, and America. So they really trying to come up with an alternative, not only to contain China, but also have its influence into this Indo-Pacific region. This is for Indo-Pacific region. Apart from that, the region which is very important as far as Eurasia region is concerned and Europe or Asia, both countries and continent is concerned, this is also very important to understand that the way, the intention, it is always there with Indian mindset that the intention, we should look out the intention of the particular country who would like to announce a kind of giant policy of BRI, not just for investment, not just for, and he is always trying to deny the fact of the key features of globalization, which is interdependency. And I think when one country is denying this fact that it is all about interdependency, if you really want to work in the globalized era, then it always leads to explosion and dangerous situation. And that's why we are into this situation.
That's right. I agree with that.
Please unmute. Please unmute, Leonid.
Yes, you're on mute.
Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I said earlier on that I wanted to thank you for your thoughts. I mean, if you look at the composition of the world currently, the United States of America, China, and India are actually the top 3 most populated countries in the world. From China to India, come to the US. And from the richest, from an economic standpoint, these 3 nations are actually within the top 7 of the richest country by GDP size in the whole world. It means that from a strategic, political, human, and even economical perspective, the continued tension amongst these 3 nations is really going to have consequences for the whole world. And so my question to Dr. Leonid is this. What are the core challenges and risks that you see emanating from the US, China, Indian continued tension? We know, I mean, starting from Dr. Punit, we're all aware of the crisis that sort of broke out between China and India right about the middle of 2020 and just suddenly escalated. Now we know that there are core tension amongst these 3 players, particularly between the US and China and India and China. So what are the core consequences and risks that you see emanating from this?
I am agree that there is some risk and challenges for not only for these 3 countries, but also for the world itself, because India, China, and the United States are nuclear powers, and they have large interest in the region, in the Indo-Pacific, exactly. And United States promoted this concept of Indo-Pacific, and India accepted this idea and accepted the idea to be a minor partner with United States, just to be actor to contain the rise of China. From another hand, I not understand why we cannot see peaceful rise of China. Why we think only in term of political realism? If we follow the school of political realism, we should to see the interest of other countries and just to talk about interest and respect this interest. India should respect interest of China. China should respect interest of India, and the same about the United States. And for example, more than 10 years ago, there were talks about Chimerica, about a new union between United States and China. And personally, Zbigniew Brzezinski promoted this idea of G2, that China should be an ally of United States and to rule the world. But it's a project not work anymore, mostly because of China interest and China respect. So China have also proposed the idea of peaceful coexistence, and India supported this idea many decades ago. And China supported the idea of multipolarity also many decades ago. The concept of Duozhihua promoted by China, and Russia signed an agreement with China about promoting of multipolarity, like a new type of relations between all global actors. And I think this idea is good, and we just should to look on this problem from alternative point of view in developing this concept, not to be in trap like Allison told about Fukidid trap, for example, and not to be in the trap of kind of aggressive relations between India and China and interest of United States in the region. Exactly, United States is not a regional player because it's from North America, exactly. And I think from Eurasian point of view, there should be Eurasian actor to deal in this region, and especially from Southeast Asia and south of Eurasia, not United States. And maybe a few years later, I hope that Indian authorities will understand this importance, that only we ourselves should to be responsible for the new world order in the region.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that's a valid and interesting perspective you've added to it. If there's a regional tension, your position is that regional players who not only coexist within the environment, but appears to have in-depth understanding of the issues, and of course, they experience some of the consequences are the ones who should attend to it. I'm going to come back to Don in a moment. Just last week, Thursday, it was reported in the papers that Joe Biden says that China won't surpass the US as a global leader on his watch. And I mean, we had known, or we had seen in the last four years or thereabout, how very confrontational, uncollaborative, uncooperative his language, his policies has been towards China. And I'm going to take a bearing from Leonid, who says, I mean, what really is the risk of a peaceful emergence of China as a second polar base for the whole world? I mean, it was reported in Reuters that United States President Joe Biden said that it would prevent China from passing the United States to become the most powerful country in the world. He vowed to invest heavily to ensure America prevails in the race between the world's largest economy. We know that, I mean, there's some quiet competition currently, but I mean, what are the risks to a peaceful emergence of China as the leading global power? Will it not profit the world more? What do we stand to lose?
Is that for me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
You can shoot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. First of all, there's so many things to say to what everyone has said. You know, in terms of multipolarity, obviously that is from starting with this. Obviously, the existing international architecture, which is essentially the debris of the previous history, including those forms that still function, they're they're outdated. They're obsolete. They're an impediment to actual constructive global relations among us as a species. We have our history to formulate things in terms of states and nations and peoples and geographically and all of that. But in fact, if you were looking at an ant colony or some other life form, you're looking at it from a whole different perspective. And our relations at a macro view aren't generally discussed in that same scientific way. That's something that's basically a marker of the vector between, our objective perception of reality and actual reality, looking at humanity as a global thing. Okay, the architecture is obsolete, cobbled together from the end of World War II, what survived all the previous history, and cobbled together since the UN and those structures, Bandung and other pushback against the older orders. You want to go back to the Russian Revolution and India and China independence and all of that. The United States succeeding as an imperial power to Britain, globally pretty much, and then being defeated in Vietnam, like seeing already the beginning of the end. The rearrangement totally of the economies in Asia over the last 30 or 40 years, that's an epical, tilt, I think, or the beginning of the epical shift to this new world where the U.S. is not the center of the universe. Will it be multipolar in ways that look attractive to us? Now, here's one example. In Latin America, since Chavez, this has been a recurring dynamic, but there was a new push towards greater local integration, firming up of sovereignty, and independent nation states set their own destiny under the control. All of that happening sort of at the micro level, which is sort of what you see with BRICS, where you have Russia, India, and China recognizing that their fates, despite their own tussles back and forth over history, their fates are tied in some real significant ways. And while that was forming, they said, we need somebody in Africa, we need somebody in Latin America. And so you have now BRICS instead of BRIC. And then you see Brazil as the largest economy, or one of the largest economies in South America at that time, right next to this thing forming called UNASUR and CELAC and all these regional integration models of economic and cultural and legal regimes. And then you start seeing some of the material connections being made, infrastructure and such, China looking, and to a lesser degree, the others, looking to invest in infrastructure, China wanting to build deep sea ports up and down Latin America, canal in Nicaragua, all of these different, things that say we're going to be doing a lot of business together over the next 100 years. And here's a big chunk of money I'm investing in it to see that it happens. This model of multipolarity and this new world that's coming out isn't just going to be settled in negotiations among Russia and India and China. And of course, while India is making deals with the United States and Russia is making deals with the United States and China is making deals with the United States, and all inter alia. That's a complex thing of its own, but there are the ground formations of this new economy also happening. There's a tide, they call it here, the pink tide recedes and comes in. I think it's a stupid term, but that's what they used to describe the phenomenon, because 10 years ago, Latin America looked like this was going to be imminent, almost complete integration of Central and South America and the Caribbean. Now that's receded to a degree where Brazil's not one of the partners in that project. Argentina wasn't, and now is back in. Ecuador looks like it's going to be run by the right wing for the next 4 years, etc. I think while we're looking at the integration of the global economy under this new model, and while people are trying to work out the problems that they have in say between Russia and India, or China and Russia and India, whoever, that the United States has to be tamed before that happens, so it cannot interfere. I mean, you're right that these things have to be done regionally. Not only is that the most democratic way, it's the most organic way. It's going to be connected to the economic structures that are growing there and whatever, all of the processes there. If the United States can be kept out right now, that's the central question in a way, how to do that. And that's when I keep coming back to, and I'm sure everybody else too, when the word dangerous pops in your head, the first thing is that, Jesus, maybe we mismanaged that and we blow ourselves up.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Don. I have an interesting question I wanted to ask Dr. Punit, but I'm just going to go to some of the consequences of the Indian-China border escalation crisis that happened last year. One of the trends that we have noticed is that since the border clashes, there has actually been social economic consequences, particularly for both countries, but more on the side of India. All right. In the last 10, 12 months, for example, there's been a resurging wave of global investment, Western investment coming towards India, particularly in technology. Okay, so I know that in November 2020, India actually banned 114 Chinese apps because of the tension, okay, because of the political tension. Now, the immediate consequence is that we have seen a massive rush of capital funds, investment into Chinese fintechs. For example, in the last few weeks, Razorpay raised about $160 million to now be valued at $3 billion. Zeta raised about $250 million, and now they are valued at more than $1 billion. Cred raised about $215 million to be valued at more than $2.2 billion. So would you say that in spite of the tension between both countries, that India is benefiting economically from escalations that happened last year? Would you say that isolation and disconnection, particularly as regional powers and collaborators that you used to be, would you say is profitable on the economic and socio-political front for your country?
The very first and forward answer of this question is that since last 7 years or so, we are decreasing in the total trade turnover between India and China. So this is something which we need to elaborate in the context of the standoff, not only to standoff between India and China, but also the emerging social wave for anti-China in India, especially in the context when this kind of aggression come just after the summit between two leaders, respective leaders like Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. And just after that, we see what we witness is that a standoff of army in between India and China at the LAC, line of actual control at the border. That's why I ask this question, or I always having this mindset that how we can see the peaceful rise of China, which already have something always in the border areas, not only with India, whosoever is the border with China having this kind of problem. So how we can define this moment of peaceful rising of China? The first point. The second point is that whenever we are going into this kind of social anti-China kind of things into the India, they are trying to give some kind of positive note from China to India that no, because of losing what they are losing in this particular ground. So they are trying to give some positive note into that. And after that, the very recent, I just give you an example, in very recent mode of action of China. Nowadays, India is witnessing 300,000 cases daily of coronavirus. And in this amid chaos of pandemic in India, China is again started this standoff in different other areas with border of India. So how you can look into this perspective, that why he choose this timing for this border standoff with India? Why there is a need to do this kind of things? Before that, it was going very smoothly, no doubt in it. Before this pandemic, India, China was raising their trade values, having some summit together with the respective leaders, and they were not any kind of indulging any kind of conflict, whether it is relation with Russia and America of India, because India is still maintained very good relationship with both the countries, either it is Russia or America. But India needs to find out who will be the helpful, as in terms of any kind of standoff between further standoff to escalate the standoff in future with China. So that is the need of our for India to proactive into this manner and have not only just initiate their own perspective, their own initiative, but also to indulge other countries into this. And that's why the situation have very much favor to US in this point of view, and that's why US is giving all kind of help and initiate this summit kind of things of Quad, and through Quad, the quadrilateral grouping, America, Japan, and Australia and India will try to some, and that's why this is the fear in Chinese, that whether this military organization Quad can develop in an economic organization. They're starting this question within their own state, that it is a future that it will be a economic organizations, or because of the other organizations which India and China have together membership, Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, like BRICS also. So how India will cope with these situations of very multi-level organization, international organization or regional organization, how India will develop into this. First and foremost thing is that China is always talking about the territorial integrity and always focus on one China policy for all the world. Then why there is a need to do something through BRI to CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is in the land of possession of India's as claimed by ourselves. So why there is a need to do, if China really want to peacefully rising, then I think India is the subtle option for China to collaborate with. I think none other state, none other nation is better than India to collaborate with China to emerging of to rising economy of the world. I think this is, if this can be happen, that new century will be for Asian century. So I think in that way, it we learn experiences that it can't happen with us, and each and every time we deceive China for every front. I think this is the important element.
I mean, I agree with you that for a prosperous world, and particularly for a prosperous Asia, it's inevitable that China and India would have to collaborate more. But what we have today is that the tension remains. I mean, from the economic blockade that we appear to have, not just a ban of the app, but a ban of the many services, particularly across the border area. What we've seen to China and India are further today than they have been for many, many years. And so there are consequences. There are consequences for this ongoing tension. We know the strategy and the intention of America. America sees a world where it plays a leading role in global geopolitical issues. Now, it's undoubted that some of the reasons for this are clearly with America in mind. In the last 4 years, particularly, what we've heard from Trump again and again was an American first policy, where America over and above looked after itself at the expense of everyone. Now there's a more global appeal, a more global approach from Biden and his team, and they are getting more involved in the issues today than they used to. So my question, Dr. Leonid, is this: knowing what is going on in the region, particularly among these core players, we don't expect that this will exacerbate into war soon, but we already have an economic situation already. We have a public health issue where I know that people are not able to travel across the border areas. It's very likely that we might have humanitarian issues. I hope not. The question for me is, what would you say with respect to how should America respond? I know that America has some bit of interest, and America is befriending India now more than they used to. But how really, in an objective situation, should America respond to the current tension, particularly between China and India?
I think that the United States will continue the same policy like before, to strengthen India in many sense. And since 2016, New Delhi has signed 3 fundamental strategic agreements with Washington. It's logistic exchange memorandum of agreement, communications compatibility and security agreement, and basic exchange and cooperation agreement for geospatial intelligence. In the regional consensus, of course, the United States and India have an intervening strategic interest in countering China. And India has cleverly introduced a narrative of common threat perception with the United States regarding China's economic rise. But neighbor countries have seriously worried about this turn of India and Russia too. For example, in February 2019, when there was clash in Kashmir region between India and Pakistan, Russia proposed to be mediator for negotiation. Then Pakistan agreed, India not agreed. And because of background of good relations between India and Soviet Union and then Russia, this position of New Delhi was very strange for the Moscow. Also, there actually no clear understanding how Biden's administration will deal with India. And a few days ago, the United States Commission on Religious Freedom asked State Department of United States to put India into the list of the worst religious liberty offenders, also with Russia, exactly. And under Trump, there was full support of Narendra Modi policy, but now situation may change it. I'm sure that there still will be support from the American military to India, but from political point of view, it's not clear exactly what will happen. And of course, China is threat number 1 for United States. We see in the last report of Director of National Intelligence of United States, and from the last national security policy. And Russia is threat number 2. Iran and North Korea also threat for United States. Then the problem is that United States may use India like proxy actor, not only against China, but also against Russia and against Iran. And it will bring the region in kind of confrontations. So, for my opinion, it's the most problem. And concerning Russia, as our Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov told during a recent visit in India, we are open for the continuation of the cooperation. And this year we will mark 20 years of strategic partnership between our countries, Russia and India, and we should to find a good solution. But for my personal opinion, that under Narendra Modi, the policy of India will be the same. It will be pro-American because BJP always was pro-American in India. So there will be tension with China, of course, and also because of good cooperation between Pakistan and China, there will be attempt to undermine this project of economic partnership between two countries. Also, problem is that India are not cooperative for regional projects. For example, SARC, and as already colleague from India told, India also is a member of BRICS and a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I think it's a good platform to find solution about the border tensions with China. But we see it not happens. For example, during our history, we have also border clash with China during the Soviet times. But now we have no any problem. It's resolved. And I think the same attempt may be used for the discussion between Indian and Chinese leaders. And, because of many aspects of economical, military, political, and the rise of Asia itself, I think that nobody needs a new conflict in this region.
Thank you so very much for that perspective. Don, I'm back to you, but I would like to provide some bit of context.
Sure.
A couple of weeks ago, President Biden's climate envoy, who is John Kerry, a former presidential candidate, himself and his Chinese counterpart agreed that China and United States, the world's two biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, should cooperate on tackling climate crisis. Okay. However, with bilateral ties at its worst in decades, and few details emerging from the meeting they've just held, observers are wondering what will cooperation look like between America and China, knowing fully well that any global coalition in any direction needs to have at the minimum these two global players on the table. The cost for the environment is maybe the most strategic today, and is not something anyone can fight alone. We all have to move in the same direction to protect the environment, to acknowledge climate change, and to advocate against the depleting of the ozone and other incidences. So how do you see a collaboration between China and America, particularly on climate? How do you see that happening?
Me? Well, the cooperation has to happen, obviously, if there's going to be any reduction in in damage to the ongoing damage being done to the planet by human activity. I'm not so sure that the first thing to do would be to look at anything outside of the U.S. military, because the largest polluter right now in the world is the U.S. military. And if one looks at the expense to the ecology of the planet that's taken there against the benefits of the activity, it's the biggest sinkhole into a climate catastrophe that we've generated as a species over the course of our existence. The U.S. military's use of fossil fuels, at a rate greater than most nations, in fact, many nations combined, with no return whatsoever except the possibility of war and more chaos and damage and destruction. The cost benefits are we're using it up so we can fly our planes and tanks and weapons around, and the benefit is so that we can tell you to do what we want you to do, or we're going to blow you up. I mean, it's not like this is going to increase agriculture here, or it's going to benefit transportation systems here, or it's going to increase industrial or commercial activity in one way or another here, and here, except for military contractors. It's not the part of the economy that global ecological and climate policy should be servicing. There's really no benefit. So I think that a lot of the other stuff, I mean, they make Paris as if it's the coin of the realm in terms of saving the planet and humanity's future from our, carelessness on global climate change, etc. Without an act of faith on the first step that, well, we're going to take the worst thing with that does the most damage with the least benefit and deal with that first. And it makes sitting down at the table with the United States a lot easier for some to stomach if that step took place first. And so I see an impediment to Russia. I mean, on China's part, of course, let's sit down and talk climate change with the United States. That thing over there, that's the big Megillah, they actually built that so they can blow us up or the Russians first. But yeah, let's talk about how to do, damage reduction. China has, you have the economic activity that's growing, still very quickly, 6, 7, 8, 10% a year, whatever. A lot of unmet needs still. If you're looking, people in China live very well, but there's definitely room for improvement, and the improvement is built into their planning, and so there's going to be more impacts, and at the same time they're dealing with mitigation, as almost I would say maybe at the forefront of humanity, certain one of the key advancement points. So the policies that would complement that internationally, of course, are very important ones to the leadership in China. And this is a very important discussion to have with the United States. But the economic discussion that should be hand in hand between those two economic powers isn't really taking place, even when it has taken place. We had, during the Obama administration, the attempt to do the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the pivot to China, all aimed at inflicting economic damage on China. There's Trump, who basically said, okay, all the rules are out, punch China in the face and say, let's talk, an aggressive posture towards them. And now this regime that comes in, we want to do climate change, but we're going to be seeing the same thing, that they want China. And that's what they're talking about, is China is the world's biggest polluter. We have to get them to come to the table. I don't think that the preliminary steps, other than the material demand of the planet to have this done, I don't think those steps have been taken, certainly not by U.S. governments. And I think, again, the main act of faith that should be demonstrated or taken about U.S. seriousness would be to dismantle the international military that maintains that is the largest polluter thermally in every way on the planet.
Yeah, thank you so very much. We'll be bringing this to a close, and I would like us to close out with a couple of questions. So I'm going to be asking each one of you just 1 or 2 questions, and then I'll give you just about a minute or so to just help me summarize so that we can just be on time. I think I'm going to start with Dr. Punit, and I'm going to ask just shortly, there's a question I had kept for you. With the ongoing tension between India and China, what do you think happens next in the dispute? And I'm asking you particularly from your perspective of not just India, but both countries. What do you think happens next? What are the risks to continued broader Sino-Indian relation, and what do you think should happen next? I'm just asking you that so we can use that to close from your perspective. Dr. Punit.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me clear 2-3 points here, which is come up in the discussion, is that one thing is very surprising for me, that when Professor Leonid told about that BJP or Narendra Modi is pro-American. One thing is very sure, that American is always calling that Mr. Narendra Modi or BJP is pro-Russian, and Russian is calling he is pro-American. So that is just a tactic about this to each other to manage their own interest, own national interest into that. But this is for sure that he is pro-national. So that is the whole criteria in which we need to see the perception of the current government, how they are managing their tie-up with the different perspective or with the different nations altogether. Because if our focus is only on that because of the cordial relations of two respective leaders, this is the same in America and India. That is the same with Russia, and he has a very good relation with Putin. So I don't think so that we should, through this glass, we need to see this perspective into that. Another thing is that when he mentioned that America recently put into that most dangerous religious kind of place into that, and we should not forget about that, we are not, okay, we are proactive into this section that what are the religious harmony and how it can be conducted into this. And it is categorically rejected by Foreign Minister Jaishankar that America, it is not America who is going to decide what kind of problem we are facing or what kind of problem facing in terms of religious extremism or kind of things. And second thing is that when we are talking about SARC, it is known worldwide that what are the prone areas, which are the prone areas as far as terrorism is concerned. And that's why India is always approaching into this context of particularly SARC with Pakistan, that everybody knows where Bin Laden was found and how this whole come up with the notion with that whole terrorism approach. Either I'm not just talking about it in one sense, I'm talking about different directions. If we are proactive to solve, if really world is so much proactive to solve the problem of Kashmir, as like mentioned here in the discussion, I think we should also proactive to mention to solve the problem of Taiwan. We should also more focus on youth problem in China, and that is we want the other nations should come up with their own perspective, what they are thinking on these issues. As far as your question is concerned, that how I look into the futures, the India-China relations in the future perspective, I think this whole depend on China. No doubt, there is no doubt that China is on upper hand. Whether you are talking about military-wise, whether you are talking about economic-wise, whether you are talking about in any condition, that is for sure. But now, if you are in upper hand, then it's your responsibility to behave in a right manner.
Yeah.
Whatever, I already told you, whatever we witnesses so far, after Wuhan summit, we witnesses and what we observed, what we experienced is the standoff. In this pandemic crisis, amid pandemic crisis, that India and China should come together to solve this problem. Or they are blaming, everybody is blaming China to originate this coronavirus. But still, India couldn't or can't give any kind of name into that. That is something positive, which should be, we also should have to see the positive rather than negative into that. India is still the largest trade partner of China. So it is not that something, everything is end here. We need to see into the right direction that although the alternative is always there, and we need to find, it is more time specific, it is more space specific. That now time is telling to us that it is in our interest to see towards America, and it's American interest to see towards India to have some kind of influence into Indo-Pacific region. And I think that is not a kind of problem for the world, because it can be very much time relative. Although it can be possible in the near future, that can be moved into the Russian, as like we categorically reject when America raised this issue that you should not buy the Sukhoi from France or Russia and this kind of things. And we were so adamant about that. Even we went to the extent to overrule the Iran sanction of America on Iran section, and we do our trade with Iran. We are able to take the support of America to overrule these sanctions of Iran and having the economic relations with Iran. So that is how one should not forget into this context. I think in all these situations, I think India and China should come together for at least for saving the humanity. What we are unprecedented challenges we are facing now in the context of coronavirus. This is my. Unmute yourself, Leonid.
Yeah, we're a couple of minutes behind our schedule, but I still want to hear some final thoughts from Dr. Leonid and Don. So I'm just going to say, Dr. Leonid, where would you put the place of Russia as a leading global player in some of the issues that we have shared? I know collaboration was a bit higher in the times of Trump, and now there appear to be a growing resistance against collaboration amongst America and Russia. We see clearly what is going on between India and China, and we know that there's a role for Russia to play as a strategic regional player and also as an influential global player. And so my question, if you can take it in 1 or 2 minutes, is what is the role of Russia in keeping stability all around the world and fostering collaboration and partnership in general? What would you say as we close?
Now we have the most worst relations with the United States, it's fact, but we have the most best relations with China for the moment. And we would like to keep good relations with all partners on the globe. It's also the official strategy of Russia. And from the point of view of worsening relations with United States and European partners, Russia more looking to the east. So for Russia, it's high importance that the Asian region, Africa, but also Latin America would like to join bilateral projects, different kinds of projects, economical, political, cultural, military, etc. But if we will focus on Southeast Asia, of course, Russia may provide any kind of assistance, for example, to be moderator between India and China, between India and Pakistan, and between China and Taiwan, for example, because the question is also very serious about Taiwanese-Chinese relations. And especially United States tried to put this agenda on own strategy in the region. So Russia is very optimistic. Russia is open for cooperation, and we already have different kind of projects like Eurasian Economic Union. We have idea of Big Eurasia about cooperative strategy with all states of Eurasian continent, and I hope that leaders of Asian country will be more cooperative for Russian proposals.
Yeah, thank you so very much. To close us out, I'm going to come back to Don, and I'll just make a statement. I mean, the Belt and Road Initiative is maybe the biggest, most ambitious program to build physical and digital infrastructure that connects multiple countries from China, across Asia, and even connects Africa. Okay, it is maybe the biggest infrastructure project the world has ever seen. In the last few weeks, we have seen the Biden administration put forward to Congress a $2 trillion infrastructure and economic recovery plan, which is supposed to put on ground physical, digital, as well as intellectual infrastructure to support America's expansion. My final question to you, which I'm hoping you will take in 1 or 2 minutes, is how do you see the future with this investment, massive investment that America is about to make? We know that for China's investment, it was a cross-continental project, but for the investment that America is about to make, how do you see this impacting or consolidating America's hold in the world, and also impacting its neighbors and others around the world? What is your view?
There was a defining moment that sets up this moment about 10 years ago, and I think not many people recognized it at the time, but they recognized it pretty quickly afterward. And that was at the United Nations at 2 moments in February of 2011, when resolutions 1970 and 1973 were adopted by the Security Council. Ostensibly, they were to sanction some Libyan officials and impose a no-fly zone on Libya's military so that the allegations of strafing protesters would no longer happen. What that led to was the destruction of Libya, which was kind of the focal point for the rising Pan-African integration economic and infrastructure projects, Gaddafi in Libya were very actively doing in Africa what Chavez and others had accomplished and would accomplish in Latin America. And as the string of pearls coming from the Belt and Road comes to Africa, there would have been in Africa with a hell of a lot more independence from the United States than the one that exists instead today. The African Union is nothing like it was 10 years ago. And you've had a number of African countries be destroyed since then, and you have now installed AFRICOM, basically Pentagon.
Sorry, Don.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I've been told that I really have to shut it down. I mean, I really love the views you're sharing, and I'm hoping that we can continue the conversation perhaps on the platform on Facebook. I want to thank every one of you for making this an interesting and engaging conversation. I did some bit of research, but I've learned quite a lot more just listening to every one of you, from Dr. Punit to Dr. Leonid and Don. Thank you so very much for making the time and for helping us have a very enriching and engaging conversation. And to the organizers, we just want to say thank you. All right. We hope you had a nice time listening to us. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.